You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Moses Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there are latest things that makes it official. Welcome to the show. We certainly appreciate you guys. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you. We bring on these brilliant, smart, educated people who share their wealth of knowledge, their lifetime journeys, their dichotomies, their crises they survived, to pass on to you to let you know you're not alone and there's ways to be smarter, better, and you can constantly improve. So we appreciate you tuning in the show. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss, one on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Today we have an amazing young man on the show. Bryan Wetzel joins us. He is the author of the latest book that come out March 23rd, 2024, called The Real Problems Destroying Education. We'll get into it and some of the things that he saw that I think you're going to be like, having some eye-opening experiences where you're just going to be like, oh my gosh, I did not know that. Bryan is an experienced entrepreneur. He has experience launching and managing successful companies. Over the course of his career, he started multiple businesses that attracted the attention of larger enterprise, resulting in 2 acquisitions. For 14 years, he oversaw the operations of his production company, establishing a reputation for excellence in the industry. Welcome to the show, Bryan. How are you?
Thank you for having me. You're already on my good side by calling me a young man.
There we go. We do that to everybody, even the 90s that come on the show. We got a few novels that are really old, but they have 100 billion books. So welcome to the show. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can go to BryanThomasWetzel.com. That's Bryan with a Y, B-R-Y-A-N, Thomas Wetzel, W-E-T-Z-E-L.com. And you can find me on Twitter at BTW.
So the real problems destroying education. We've been wondering, what's going on with education. There's lots of people up in arms over education. Give us a 30,000 overview of your summation in your new book.
As the subtitle of it says, everyone is to blame. And I do believe that what there is there's 20 different tug of wars going on for money, for resources, for grades, for scores, and nobody seems to know or want to give in to make some common sense decisions. And a lot of the decisions that I saw were based more around more money being brought into the top. I think the notion is that there's not enough money in education. We need more education. But most state budgets, 1/4 to 1/3 goes to education. And that's not to say that there doesn't need to be more money. It needs to be better handled. I have the statistics in my book, but at the top, I'm talking districts, the salaries have gone up hundreds of percentage points, whereas at teachers have only gone up maybe 10% in, say, the past 2 years. Yeah. And so what's happening is you're getting a lot of that money captured at the top with bigger salaries. And some of the retiring administrators that I spoke to often said that they loved it when they got more money from the state or federal government because it meant raises, but not for the teachers. The teachers actually have to wait for either the federal government, the state government, or the county government to issue raises. Another thing is that, and my wife is a teacher. She's been a teacher now for 24 years. One of the things that is happening is we are losing good teachers, and this should be alarming to people. Yeah. Experienced teachers know how to teach. Every single teacher I've interviewed will tell me that within the first 2, 3, 4 years, they were a decent teacher, but after that, they started to really get into the flow. They understood what the students didn't understand. They understood better how to explain those lessons. And so when you're losing teachers so fast, you're filling up these schools with people who are not is experience, and that's a problem. And I'll give you a good example of this. A lot of them are leaving because of behavior. That was the number one thing when I surveyed teachers. Second thing was a lack of support. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody I interviewed, I mean, all of them said that behavior is worse and worse. And we'll come back to that in a second.
Okay.
One of the things, they don't feel like they're supported by the administration. The administration continues to pour more responsibilities on them, and it's just gotten to be too much. I had one teacher tell me she almost felt like a paralegal. She has to fill out so much paperwork. Anytime there's behavioral issues, anytime something is missed, anytime something happens, and if there's going to be a meeting with parents, there's got to be, the minutes of the meeting kept and notes afterwards, notes before. It goes on and on. But what I was trying to get to was that in New Jersey, for instance, they're so short of teachers, the governor did away with the certification test. So you have teachers who will be getting into school to teach who haven't taken a test just to prove that they, kind of understand it. They just decided that if you get over 850 on the SAT, then you can be a teacher. Wow. And here's where the illogic in that comes in. You haven't reduced the problem. You haven't reduced the stress. You haven't taken care of the issues that forced good teachers, qualified teachers, to leave the profession. How long do you think the teachers who are not as qualified are going to stay?
Oh, God, yeah. Probably
no longer.
Mm-hmm.
With respect to behavior, what has turned out, when I was young, there was a 3 strikes rule, depending on what it was you did. If you were just being, a little brat in class, the 3 strikes didn't apply, but you probably would be visiting the vice principal's office quite a bit. I've been in schools now and either witnessed and then spoken to the teachers. You have literally second graders telling their teachers to F off.
Wow.
And throwing things at them, hitting them in the head with shoes.
Oh, wow.
Being disruptive and doing things. And what happens is they go down to the vice principal's office and administration sends them back and says, you're going to have to deal with this.
Wow.
And then when the parents begin to complain, because now you have this tug of war between the teacher cannot do anything. There's no leverage for discipline, especially if the parents aren't going to step in and intervene, or if administration is not going to at least take the teacher's side in this issue. And this is really upsetting to a lot of teachers. You can imagine, are you married?
No.
Okay. If my wife had a kid throw a shoe and hit her in the head, that would be a big deal. That wouldn't be just something that happened. That would be a big deal. And for her not to be able to discipline in that instance, that would bother her quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the kids are just getting away with too much. Most of the school systems have put in a 10 strikes rule.
10 strikes?
10 strikes. And the reason they made it 10, I was talking to an administrator who just retired about 8 months ago. He said the reason they made it 10 was they surmised in most counties that in elementary school, they would be at least moving on to middle by then and they wouldn't have to deal with it. And in middle, they'll be moving on to high school at 10 strikes, so they won't have to deal with it. And so they're just putting the problem off down the road. So by the time they get to high school, what do you think they're acting like? They have been able to wag the dog.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom was a teacher for 20 years, and she's been retired she's 82, so she's been retired for probably 30 years or something. So I'll have to ask her when she retired. But so she's been gone a long time, but she started seeing the crossover of, she lived in Utah, so it was Republicans who were constantly cutting back the budgets for the schools. And she would call me and I would be like, I just went to the thrift store and I spent $250. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's a lot. She's, I got to educate and entertain these kids. She did elementary schools. And I'm like, we get reimbursed for that, right? She's like, no. I'm like, you're spending $250 of your own damn money doing this thing? I couldn't believe it. I just fell from the chair the first time I heard it. And then she would constantly call me over the years, and she'd be like, yeah, they doubled our class size again. They doubled our class size again. And
To save money.
To save money. They would constantly just be cutting back all the things. We talked about, so your premise is it's largely all about money that needs to fix schools. We need to pay
It
educators.
needs to be reallocated. We need to be paying the teachers at the bottom. And one of the things I start off the book with is that I've heard people complain that teachers they're boring, they're not good enough, they're whatever it is. And I always tell them, I said, first of all, you and I would be fired from that job in the first day, because the first time a kid smarted off to me, I'd probably say something inappropriate. But I just tell people that it's not as easy a job as you think it is, number one. And people getting mad at them, that's like going to Target and getting mad at the employee for the price of the products. They don't have any control over that. Teachers, a lot of them, when I ask them what they really, if they could wave a magic wand and get one wish, the one thing they always say is that I just want to teach. I know how to teach. Let me teach. But they're constantly being told, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We've added 5 more assessment tests just in the first 4 months. We're going to do these. We have to do this. And they're not considering the fact that there's less teachers doing this. And so now their workload and the stress level is just killing the profession. It's just killing them.
Yeah.
And I will say this on the thing with money. You're right. They do. We will spend about 200, 250. My wife is a elementary school. She's 3rd right now. We will spend about 250. Now, the Republican governor, Sonny Perdue, when he was here, he used to give out what was called Sonny money. Every teacher got $100 extra to pay for stuff for their room. But as soon as the next governor came in, although that was during the housing bubble, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but that went away. But in most states, it's on the teacher, and that's it. And this is one of the things I used to tell my wife. I said, if you worked at a corporation, you would turn in your receipts, and they would reimburse you because you're doing this for your job.
Yeah.
So why is it not like that for teachers?
Yeah. Why is it? It's an interesting aspect. So what I started to tell with my story with my mom was she started seeing that changeover where parents, if I got called to the principal's office, my parents were coming to kick my ass.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I knew I was effed to the 9th degree. I didn't get in there much, but when I got in there, I knew that something bad was going to happen. And it was going to happen to me. And I had done whatever I had done to get in there. And, sometimes we acted out in high school. We were having a hard time with bullies and sometimes we acted out. But we're kids.
There were no anti-bullying movements back when we were growing up.
Yeah.
You just had to deal with it.
Just had to deal with it.
The one thing about that is when we went home, we were home. Now that bully follows them around if they can't put down their phone.
Oh, yeah, on social media, you're right. Yeah, very much. She saw the changeover when the parents started blaming the teachers for everything and attacking them for, how dare you give my kid an F, How dare you do this? And basically, what she felt at the time was that they were trying to make her the parent of their snotty kid. And that's when she really saw it, and she kind of started those changes where the admin wouldn't back her up anymore. I don't know why is the administration's becoming not working as a team with teachers? Why is there a chasm there?
When I interviewed 69 people on that very question, and I got varying answers, but a lot of it seems to focus on the fact that districts now are more worried about lawsuits. And what happens as a principal, so that this, in most cases, it's a strike against the principal if the parent reaches out to the district. They don't want that. So the principal wants to placate that parent at the school level so that they do not escalate, because that looks bad on the administration at the school. which is sad because it shouldn't be that way. As a matter of fact, I think there are times when a district should step in and say, no, we're not doing that, or we're not allowing that kind of behavior. But they just don't want to deal with it. Wow. They just don't want to deal with it. So I think there is an increase in lawsuits. Well, what's interesting about that is when I was researching that, the amount of lawsuits that get won against a school district are very small. I mean, you have to come in with some pretty powerful evidence that your teacher discriminated or gave your child a bad grade because they just didn't like your child. One of the things, I don't even understand that, because most teachers love their students. I'm not saying that there aren't any teachers that single out a student that maybe rubs them the wrong way, but I think that's probably rare in most cases. A lot of times, when I had my education come, we used to laugh at these stories where you would see a parent who would say, my son is doing terrible because it's the teacher who's coming in. So they'll take him out of that class, put him in another class, and guess what? The same problems. So is it the child or was it the teacher? But nobody ever makes that connection.
I'll tell you what the problem is.
And by the way, when you're talking about getting in trouble in middle school, I was talking over the teacher and I'd been warned enough. I got sent to the vice principal's office and he said, tomorrow at 10 a.m. you're going to get spanked. And he sent a note home for my parents to approve the spanking. Oh, really? I got in trouble at home and they signed off on me getting spanked.
Yeah. Good.
But you know what? I know people think that's harsh, but I shut my mouth for a little while.
Yeah, we need more. I mean,
we do. And you got rambunctious boys. They need to at least fear something.
Yeah. In my neighborhood, the neighbor would beat you for whatever you did to his thing, and then he would send you home, and then your mom would beat you and go, wait till your dad comes over. And and then they make me get on the phone. My parents would do this thing where they would, anytime we did something bad, we would have to call and apologize. And you learn a lot learning to say you're sorry to people.
That brings humility. It teaches at least that much.
It sure does. And
I don't think enough kids have humility these days. At all.
They totally lack.
I own a gym, for instance, and I had an incident last year sometime. We're a 24-hour gym, but we locked the doors when we're not staffed, and we were closing up. And a kid came up and said, hey, open the door for me. Not please, or do you mind? And I said, it's locked. If you have your key card, you can get in. He said, well, I didn't bring it. I said, then you need to go home and get it. And I was in my car talking to him. I said, we're leaving. And he literally said, get out and come open the door. And I said, I'm not opening the door. Go get your key card. And then he said, am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah, sure.
He said, who the fuck are you? This is a 16-year-old kid talking to an adult. And I stood up and I said, you know who I am? I'm the owner of this place, and you're about to lose your membership. And his friend was pulling on his arms like, shut up. But I came home, I told my wife, I would never have spoken to an adult like that when I was 16. Yeah. And if my mom had found out, it would have been all over.
Yeah. This is what emotionalism brings you. We move from a logic and reason society to emotionalism.
Sometimes I think psychologists too have kind of screwed things up by telling you that there's never a time for, negative reinforcement. I think negative reinforcement, if it doesn't cross over into abuse, and I'm not even talking about spanking, I'm just talking about I'll tell you a story. I would be embarrassed to tell this story if it was my story. I was in Florida. Teacher tells me this story that she's a second grade teacher, that she had a conference with a parent. She tells the parent, your son falls asleep every day in class. He can't keep his eyes open. And the parent said to her, I know, he just won't stay off that iPad all night playing games. I keep telling him to put it away. I'm like, this is a 7-year-old. You know what you do? You take the iPad away and you hide it and tell him he's not getting it again until he listens to mom and dad. I would be embarrassed to tell that story, that a 7-year-old was able to get one over on me.
Yeah. It's just hilarious. And this comes from the growth of single parent homes too, as well.
Yeah.
It's the explosion of single parent homes has really stressed the family. And of course, like I said, my mom 40 years ago was dealing with people that want their kids raised by the teachers. Like it's the teacher's job to raise them. And then, of course, they're never wrong. There's no self-accountability. Once again, emotionalism. We live in now this victimhood society that's been brought to us by emotionalism, where everyone's a victim, and it's like a competition of who can be more. We talked a little bit about vouchers in the green room. What's the deal on that, and how is that having an impact on the money and the thesis of your book?
I think based on our conversation, you're against them. I am for them for the most part. Now, there's a lot of nuance to the voucher system because there are negative aspects, negative consequence. Everything has, one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Sowell is, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So it brings about other problems, but it also fixes some problems. Mm-hmm. I think in the interim, when people are serious, I've spoken to so many parents who say, I don't want my kids going to the local school. And we can't afford to go to a private, but with the voucher they could. And it just depends on the state. Every state has their own rules. Most states though, so for instance, in Georgia, I think they spend $9,600 and some change per student every year. The voucher you're getting is only $6,800. So you're probably putting up another $6,000 for a lower end private school. Wow. But if the full price was too much for you, maybe this does help. And it depends on, some states have done it, in my opinion. So they'll let you use the vouchers for homeschool supplies. I think that's not a bad idea. I think that it needs to be tinkered with, but the knock on vouchers that I hear is that it's taking money away from the school.
Yeah.
But that's the nuance I'm talking about, because it only follows the child. So there's going to be less children in that school, they don't need as many resources. And there is some evidence that has come out of, I think, Stanford and another gentleman out of Harvard, that a lot of times when the school population drops by 10 or 12%, the school itself is actually doing better, because now the teachers don't have 24 students in their class.
Yeah.
And the education actually seems to get a little better. And so I don't want to throw out vouchers altogether. I think you have to tinker with some of the negatives that are valid, but I don't think that we should take it away entirely. I think that it is a good idea. And one of the things I tell people when I'm having this debate, because I'm not going to take a hard stand as no or yes, because like I said, I think it's about even on negatives and positives. But I have met parents in very low income areas where I was doing a speech for a school or whatever, and they are just disheartened that they cannot get their kid out of the school that he's getting bullied in, or the test scores are terrible and they don't feel like they're getting a great education. And I feel for them on that. Mm-hmm. And since we cannot seem to fix the public school, by the way, I don't think all public schools are terrible. My book does not advocate getting rid of public school, but I do think that based on where you are, there are a lot of decisions that make no common sense that are making those public schools worse. And to make them better seems to be a challenge, because you got to get the people at the top, and that may be the district or the state, to admit that what the real problems are. But that's why I think that vouchers are not necessarily a bad thing. And I've met some people in other states that benefited from them quite a bit, and they weren't wealthy people.
Yeah. I suppose, if you've got a bad school in your area, we have a lot of psychologists on the show, and from what they tell us is a lot of men have been driven from the school system. And
Yes.
some of it has become, I'm a moderate Democrat, but I'm very far against the far rights and left of our politics right now.
Right. I think that anytime you've gone to the far side of either, you've gone too far.
Gone too far.
You've gone too far.
I try and sit in the middle as an American, not as a Democrat, but I try and sit in the middle as an American and try and understand what people are trying to accomplish with their ideals and try and figure out how we can meet in the middle. And that's what we all need to do more. The middle seems to be the only sane part in this country sometimes.
Yeah.
And so the woke agenda, the extreme emotionalism, tromping blue hairs, we call them, they've really driven men, to our understanding of what we talk to psychologists, from the field and some of that sort of agenda. But not giving boys recess, I think, has been a real problem. Taking recess away from boys who need to expel that energy.
Yeah.
I've had psychologists on the show who wrote books 20 and 30 years ago about how we were letting boys down, and from what they've wrote 30 years ago, they nailed it on the head of where we would be right now. One of the problems they talk about is boys being treated as dysfunctional girls, and basically just abused and demasculated because they stop squirming, stop sit. Why can't you be more like the girls? They basically treat the boys like defective girls.
Yes.
And
I'm impressed that these people you have on have identified that, because I've actually read some books from psychologists who think it's a good thing, but I don't see it as a good thing at all.
Most psychologists are women now. I think about 70% of them are women. So I don't know where that agenda comes from. They took
my daughter is getting that degree now.
And so they that's a big problem, especially when enough women join the group that they could declare masculinity toxic, which is
my wife, who is in a good public school, she will tell you without recess, like the couple times they've told her, don't take them out for recess. It's too hot or it's too cold. And she says, no, I'm taking them out. They need 15 minutes to clear their head, run around. She will tell you that when they come in from running around, they're a little worn out. They sit down and they focus on what she's talking about. But if you just keep them captured all day in a room with four walls, that eventually, they're tuning out. They're looking for other things. I'm in front of a computer a lot. I have to get up, once in a while and go outside and see what the sun looks like.
So more money needs to go into education on your thesis and everything else, why this is important. I
actually don't advocate for more money.
Oh, okay.
No. And I have the charts in there. What I'm trying to say is that there's more than enough money coming into education. It's not getting to where it needs to go.
Oh, okay. I see that.
It's getting stuck at the top. You would be surprised at what district leaders are making as compared to, say, 10 years, 20 years ago. The salaries at the top have grown hundreds of percentage points over what the teachers, who I think their salaries have gone up 6.4%. It's sad, because what they're doing is they're advocating for more money, but they're just keeping it for themselves. They're keeping it for management. And most teachers will tell you they are micromanaged to the max.
Yeah.
And that's where when I said that, a lot of them in the interview said, I just want to teach. I know how to teach. Just let me teach. But they're being told they have to teach it this way. Math is a great example. During Common Core, a lot of parents said, wait, why am I doing the math this way? The other way worked fine.
Yeah.
But they were being told this is how you're going to teach it. Sometimes I think, too, that as you talk about psychologists, that there's people who are smarter than me. But one of the things I've noticed is that they tend to think that everybody thinks like they do. And a good example of this is, so the math portion of Common Core, which caused such a blow up in this country, that was written by math professors who love math. I don't love math. My dad's an accountant, and we would, if you heard our homework sessions where he's trying to help me, that I just fussing back and forth for an hour and a half. But they wrote it so that, for instance, I'll give you this always cracks people up. So you and I learned how to originally to add through the standard algorithm. That's the numbers stacked on top, and then you do the line and you do it down. That wasn't allowed in a lot of states until after 5th grade, because they said that they don't understand what they're doing, even though they're getting the answer right. And so they said, so they're going to do, we have 7 different methods to add those 4 numbers. 7. And what every teacher I talked to said, and this is kind of predictable, they said that the students who were already good in math mastered those 7. But the ones who were struggling in math are now confused by the steps from the 5th way to do it, and the 7th way, and the 3rd way. And you just confuse them more instead of simplifying it for them to get it. You made it more complicated. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize this. I have this conversation all the time. What they're learning in 3rd grade right now, I didn't learn until 8th and 9th grade.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They're multiplying fractions in 3rd grade in a lot of states. They're doing in 3rd grade now, you have to cite your work.
Wow. When
you write something. And that cracked me up because I was telling my wife, I said, so when you come back from summer break, do they have to cite their work about what I did at Disney World? I don't understand. Like, how deep are these writings from a 3rd grader?
Yeah, we got to have some deep stuff from them, that's for sure.
Yeah, but they're teaching them to cite, and it's, I had a teacher phrase it to me this way. She said, they're trying to stuff too much into these little heads that's too early in age, and then they wonder why the scores fall. And instead of backing off the rigor, because that's what they call it, when we were at when I had Skubes and we were selling, they were rigor. You had to have really good rigor. Instead of backing off of that rigor and finding a point where more kids understand it, they just changed how they grade it. And in like California, they're not even giving grades below a D. You can't get below a D. And they've gotten rid of the the gifted programs, because they say it hurts the kids who can't make it. Wow. I'm like, everybody should see a bar that they want to try and reach. We shouldn't take away the bar at all and say it doesn't matter. Yeah. And now, so those students who probably should be in gifted in California are now probably bored in class.
Yeah, it's a tough thing that people need to do. And I mean, do you see anything changing? Do parents need to be the proponents for change? Do you need to demand more from legislatures and local districts?
Yeah, they really do. I don't know that they're being listened to right now, so I don't know if they need to get more vocal. You've seen videos on YouTube of parents getting arrested from school board meetings. Yeah. I don't advocate for that either. I think that should be free, as long as you're respectful, your freedom to speak at the board meeting should be honored. I think that, I don't really know. One of the things that I feel like is that there's going to have to just maybe be a small crash of education for people to get it. If you look at some of the inner cities like Chicago and Baltimore, they'll have less than 3% of their students graduating at grade level reading and math. Wow. That just shouldn't be happening. Yeah. I'm not saying that they should have 100%, but can we agree that it should be above 6%? So what you're doing now is you're pushing those kids out to school, and they don't know how to do the basic math and English skills. How are they going to get a job? And then we wonder why they continue on with with living a much poorer lifestyle. I just think that if you're not going to educate them, then you're just dooming them for, doing blue collar menial jobs for the rest of their life.
Yeah. And it's a wild thing. Do parents need to try and do better at parenting. I mean, I'm a big advocate for holding parents responsible for stuff.
I am too.
I've been tired of it for 40 years. I've yelled for a long time that if you buy a gun for your kid and he takes it to school, you should go to jail with the kid. I'm just tired of.
I agree with that.
I'm just tired of shitty parents raising shitty kids, phoning it, and I see it all the time when I go out. And now it's
lazy parenting, is what it is.
Yeah. Now
it's
we're
lazy
finally
parenting
doing it where we're starting to prosecute the parents, and we need more of that. We need parents to go, hey, maybe you should have one less kids so you can control your life and you can control the kids and maybe raise some better kids. Maybe you should think more about parenting. I'm an advocate for putting sterilization in the water and making it so you got to go to college for 2 years before you can even get married and have kids. I'm sick of it.
I don't know if I go quite that far.
Yeah, it's a bit.
I will say this: I own guns. I'm a gun. I'm not an advocate, but I believe that you should have your rights. If you buy a gun, in the shooting that took place in Georgia this last time, the father had been visited by the FBI and the GBI, said your son's making threats, terroristic threats. And then that was in March. And what did he buy him in December?
He buys him a gun.
He buys him a gun.
And every one of these kids is fucked up in the head, and they go, maybe a gun will make things better. And you're just like,
yeah.
No.
You know, the stupidity of that decision is hard to wrap your head around. And in that instance, I think he should go to jail. Absolutely.
And I think if
he's just as complicit in the shooting because he gave somebody who was already known to be a bit unstable a weapon.
Yeah. If I give somebody a gun, I'm an accessory. So they're
you shouldn't be giving your guns away.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, you never know what somebody's going to do with it, especially.
No one's ever asked me, by the way. If they came and said, hey, I need a gun real quick, I'd be like, wait, why? Why do you need a gun so fast that you can't go through the background check and do it yourself? There's something I need to know about.
And every one of these kids is a mess. Like, we've had people on who've written books about the school shooters, and every one of these kids is a mess. And then they get access to a gun.
A lot of them are on medication.
Yeah.
I write about that. I have a whole chapter on medication, and the numbers even made me gasp.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's astounding. And teachers. A lot of teachers are on anti-anxiety medicine, maybe more than 50% by some estimates of the teacher population, to deal with stress and other things. But with respect to students, it's astounding how many of them are on more than one medication. Oh. And I have a problem with this. I think that medication is good and helps a lot of kids, but I don't think as many kids who are getting the medication should be on it. And I'll give you a story. I've heard this story more than half a dozen times. A mom was telling me her kid is on ADHD medicine and anti-anxiety medicine. He's 9.
Wow.
How much anxiety do you have at 9? But he was still acting out in school after they had tried 2 different medications for ADHD. The next time they went and told the doctor he's still acting like a little brat, the doctor flipped open a book that had all the different medications in these little pockets and told the kid, let's choose which one you want to try next. Doesn't seem like there's any science behind it. It's just kind of like an allergy medicine. That one didn't get rid of your sniffles. Here, try this one.
Try one. We just teach them to be drug.
Yes, and you're messing around with their brain chemistry. That cannot be good. I tell a story. I don't remember if I tell it in the book. I think my wife wanted me to take it out. I probably left it in. I used to have a restaurant, and I was astounded by how many of the young high school girls were on medication for depression, anxiety. But I had one girl, I loved her to death. She was 16, and we would cut up, and I'd poke fun at her and whatever. We had a good relationship. One Sunday, she doesn't show up, which was unusual. So I texted her and then went back doing what I was doing. She was just going to be running food. And I got back this text. It was maybe 3 paragraphs long, and it was hard to really follow. It was kind of sporadic about how she'd been mistreated, and she hated the job, and she didn't know she'd be back, and she's very angry with everyone there. we were busy, and I was like, I guess I'll address this later. Her mom comes in the next day and says, "Oh, she forgot to take her meds for 3 days, and so she was just like out of her mind. She's so embarrassed. She doesn't hate working here. She really wants her job back." And I was like, maybe you should be in charge of her taking it if that's the result of missing. I just couldn't believe how she changed.
Wow. Just getting off the meds. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess you kind of swing back the other way from what the meds were trying to do.
I mean, I've had friends that have gone. I had a girlfriend who got off her cancer meds for pituitary gland cancer, and it was regulating the offsetting of what your natural steroids are your body puts out. And she went off those, and I couldn't figure out why my girlfriend had changed and had no energy and was dying. And she lived that way for a year. For finally, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And after I moved her out, I found her empty pill bottles, and I was like, "Hey, you have these pill bottles here. Did you need them? Were they important?" "Oh, that's just my medication for the cancer." I went off at 3 months into our relationship. Oh, that was the thing. I noticed the dates on the things. That was when that was when the dates on the pill bottles matched up to when our relationship crashed when she went off her meds. So yeah, it's there's a lot of people on meds nowadays. It's crazy.
There's a lot of people, but some of those are, they're necessary.
Yeah.
I'm not up. I always tell people, I always, you talk about being in the center politically. I think that a lot of things in life, like medicines are good, but they can also be bad. We should find out where that middle ground is with it. I think that too many things are being prescribed because it's a moneymaker.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've just turned this whole generation into pill poppers.
Oh yeah, my wife and I just finished Dope Sick. Have you ever seen it? Ooh, it's about the Purdue Pharma Oxy.
I've seen that one a long time ago when it first came out.
Yeah, it has Michael Keaton in it.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen the Michael Keaton version. I don't think I've seen that.
They had a Netflix version with Matthew Broderick. That was very good too.
Yeah. And I mean, parents need to do more at home. I think the explosion of single parent homes has created a problem. This problem, kids raised without their fathers, is a lot of this problem.
There's also a lot of lazy parenting.
Yeah.
I mean, I can just tell you that most teachers I will say, they don't even grade homework anymore, but the teacher still wants to see them do it.
Yeah.
Because that way she can know whether the class understands what she's been teaching. And a lot of the parents just don't make their kids do the homework anymore. Once they found out it wasn't being graded, they just toss it aside. Wow. And I think that that's wrong. I would still make my kids do the work. Make your kids do the work. When they get to be adults, they'll do the work.
Teaching self-accountability is one of the biggest problems we have in our society because we live in this emotionalism, victimhood society.
Yeah, we have a "don't judge me" mentality also.
Yeah.
So if somebody says something a little egregious and you respond, they say, "You don't judge me."
Yeah. And teaching self-accountability to kids, being accountable for your problems. When they see that, you're blaming the teacher for how they were raised and stuff, I mean, people really got to look in the mirror. I mean, it all comes down to, I always tell people that bitch about everything, I go, you got the government you deserve. You voted these people in. And if you didn't have to vote, you still voted them in. Half this country doesn't even bother voting, I guess. So,
I know.
And if you want better schools, if you want better government, elect better people. And and so many people just don't give a shit. They phone it in. There's still people I will never understand. It seems like the people who are in the independent field, I make my choice when I enter the booth. Are you fucking serious? Like,
really?
You can't make any sort of deduction of where you are before you
I don't know what you're learning when you get in the booth, but
are you going eeny, meeny, miny, mo or something with the things there? Like how it's kind of like what the California trial system has become. You could be a juror to oversee whether someone murders someone else, like O.J. Simpson, if you prove that you don't know shit about anything, you don't go anywhere, and you don't watch TV. seriously, these are the people we have making these choices, and we wonder why OJ gets off. But,
Yeah, and I think that in that light, like when it comes to medical trials, I think that's too complicated for the average person. I think the jury should be made up of people who have at least a medical background, maybe even a biology background, but you asking lay people to adjudicate something that is above their head is a disaster.
yeah. It's and instead of just trying to learn what that is, they just work off of Dunning-Kruger idiot disease, and I don't know. I looked up on the internet and said this. So it's been fun and insightful to have you on. Hopefully you can change the minds and hearts of what's going on in the business of education and return it back to its glory. I think public schools are really important.
They are important.
No matter how rich I was, I mean, I suppose if I was super rich, there'd have to be a security detail. But for the most part, I love public school. What I learned in public school taught me survival skills. Yeah, there was bullying, but I came out stronger for it. One day I got bullied and I just lost it. Started beating the shit out of them, and they never bullied me again.
That's pretty much how I think most people end up handling it.
I learned a very important lesson in life, and now it bullies me.
I grew up in the country. I always tell people my bus rides were like a cage match.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
The kid behind you flicking your ear, one smacking you on the top of the head.
Yeah. I threw down in a few buses, that's for sure. Which is an interesting environment to fight in. You got chairs of people, but it works every now and then. I wanted to throw some people out the back of the bus, but I don't know.
Yeah, that might have gotten you suspended for sure.
I would have. It's a good thing I'm not like I am now. So, Bryan, thank you very much for coming to the show. It's been wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be on here, and thanks for having me.
Give us your final pitch out to people to pick up the book and any .coms where they can reach out to you to learn more.
You can go to BryanThomasWetzel.com, BryanThomasWetzel.com. And it's a site that was put up for other reasons, but I have the book and a lot of information about me on there. My final synopsis is that the book I tried to write it down the middle. I don't go too far left or too far right, because I do actually think there are arguments that both sides make that are valid. And so don't be afraid to read it if you get into it at the beginning and think that it's leaning this way or that way. I kind of take everybody to task in this book, and most of it is built around things I had literally witnessed.
Yeah. I mean, it's a rising tide lifts all boats. We all need to jump in and fix this one.
And we need an educated population. You can imagine 50 years from now, even 30, if we're not educating these kids, what are we just assuming AI is going to do everything for them?
Yeah.
That's no way to live.
We're in a crisis situation, people being dumber than ever. Just go on social media. I mean, even politicians, you see, some of these people are just so freaking dumb. What's the old adage?
Yeah.
George Carlin. Think about how average the average person is, and realize 50% of the people are dumber than that.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
And some of them are holding office.
And some of them are breeding, so that's why I didn't have kids. Anyway, just a joke there, folks. So thank you very much for coming on. Folks, order up Bryan's book, The Real Problems Destroying Education, March 23rd, 2024. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. There you go.